I forgot to hit the button. Good morning, everybody.
I was like, oh my gosh, did Chris add a menacing laugh into the singer?
Like, it's not doing anything. Oh, wait, that's me.
That's one way to start a Friday.
Well, good morning, everybody. How are we doing today?
Morning. Doing well. How
Pretty
about
good.
yourselves?
Pretty good. In my afternoon.
Excellent. Oh, best day ever. We get to celebrate with each other at this wonderful Fabric Friday, and we're starting to kick off Power BI's birthday. Woo! Yes,
Woo-hoo!
Power BI is 10 years old. Holy cow! Yes, we had a blackout. Oh, so excited to be here. Excited to be celebrating 10 years of Power BI. I can hardly believe that's been a thing. We'll talk more about that in just a second. I before we do that though, I want to Ben. You're brand new to the stream. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks very much. And I'm incredibly honored for the opportunity to jump on. I watched last week's or 2 weeks ago with Ginger, who I'd only been speaking to. She was over here in Dublin in earlier this month as well. So it was great to see that conversation. But yeah, so my name's Ben Watt. I'm originally an Australian guy, but I've been living in Dublin for 25 years now, and I'm fully hooked into the Irish world. And my wife is from here, and my kids are pretty much Irish speaking children, well, adults now, I guess they're getting on. I've been doing data stuff forever. I left school in 1992, and back then IT was kind of new, and you know, when you're leaving school, you get to pick what college courses you might want. I picked all engineering things. I wanted to do environmental engineering, mechanical engineering, something like that, but IT was kind of coming through, and so I was like, you know what, I might put that as my first choice, and I got a slightly higher score than I expected, and I got thrown into IT, and I didn't even know how to turn on a computer, and I'm in a college degree about it, people writing Pascal, and I'm like, what on earth is going on? Anyway, long story, I've been doing predominantly Microsoft related data things. I was building data warehouses for a bank in 1996 and 7 using SQL 6.5, and have kind of come along the whole journey through Microsoft's evolution. And I've worked for small companies, big companies, and I started my own place in 2018, and I'm still on that journey. So we're 7 years, actually this month we're 7 years old.
Wow.
And we are up to 10 people at the moment, and plans to continue to grow as we have some success with our customers. So I'm a Power BI guy. I remember installing it when it was Power Pivot add-in for Excel back in
Yep.
I'm going to say it was 2009. And I remember Power View, and I remember it was mentioned with Ginger about setting up SharePoint and putting Power View in SharePoint. I mean, like that was terrible days. And my prediction for Power View is that it would not succeed because I just thought it was too simple. But what I didn't realize is that people loved it because it was just looked nice. It was simple and interactive, and hey presto, that's where it got to. So that's my long version of a short story, or maybe the other way around.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll say this is going to be a little bit of a new thing we're going to be trying from time to time. We're just going to be talking about data stuff today. So a lot of this is going to be on the people on the live stream, yourselves, who are going to be here. So it's going to be a very interactive conversation. So if you've got questions or you've got topics that you want, put those into the stream. And it could do Q : if you have a question. But if there's a topic that you want us to just talk about and just riff on, put T : We're going to be trying the T : method here to even,
Ooh.
just hit on something that you want to just hear more of, right? Like maybe you want to talk about embedded or row level security, or what the heck is that Spark thing that people talk about? Whatever it is, if you have a topic that we want to talk about, let's hit in on that.
And if you get really bored, press Alt F4 and just go and do something else outside.
That's spot on.
I don't want to lose our guests. I'm only joking. Don't press that. Stay.
Please stay, please stay.
It's the T colon. You know, you're oh my gosh. Okay, so I know Kimball. What do you mean by Ross, Donald? Or does anyone know what Ross means?
I think Ross was part of the Kimball group. I could be wrong.
Was there a fight there? I would love to know more about that. So Donald is all about the STAR schema, the Kimball methodology for building out reports and building out data. Kimball would also be the and maybe I'm going to be wrong on this one, but I'm 90% sure is Kimball was very much on the side of the data mart concept, where you have your central warehouse, but you allow teams to build and manage marts. Oh my gosh, Margie Ross was a co-author.
Oh yeah. She wrote a lot of the content out there still for Kimball Group.
Oh my!
I'm happy to just give my answer straight off the bat, if you like, on
Please.
Kimball. And so, Donald, thanks for the question. It's probably one of the most fundamental things that has to be considered when you're building a BI solution, not just general analytics, but business intelligence and facts and dimensions. It is like bottom line crucial in building out a good quality solution for Power BI. Not every reporting tool requires that level of adherence to the Kimball method. So Kimball and there's a conflicting and opposite one of build-in-mon, where you're talking about data warehouse version design versus data mart design, and it's approaching the same net conclusion from slightly different angles. And you're right, Chris, the Kimball method is around the data mart, so it's a topic and discussed. It's a topic within the business contained within one or a couple of facts, but the data warehouse is like, give me everything in my organization and deliver it out from there. That's as simple as I can kind of talk about it. And we talk about facts and dimensions as an absolute critical conversation when we're building out solutions. So data modeling is hugely essential, and we spend an enormous amount of time in that space before we put I'm not going to say pen to paper, but before we start loading data, we really do understand that model to ensure that we build it the right way to get in, and it makes an efficient and performant and easy way for that data to get out at the other end. So that's kind of my take on it.
Right. I think some people forget that without a STAR schema, things become a lot less accurate really quickly. When you're talking about many to many relationships, when you're trying to figure out how do I relate these two facts together, it's really easy for Power BI to be like, you wanted this number 4 times, right? That's what you told me in this relationship. Let me go ahead and do that. Let me quadruple your number for you real quick. And I think STAR schema is really important, like you said, then just to get it to be accurate. It's going to be quicker. It's all wins, right? It's all gravy if you can get a STAR schema.
So I think the biggest win that I always advocate for when I think STAR schema is a lot of what I learned, at least when I started learning Kimball, is about its goal being simplicity, not just for performance, but also for understandability. And I think that's the part that a lot of people overlook. The idea of simplifying your models and designing things this way is also like you're trying to make this intuitive for your business users. We always talk self-service analytics. And I think a lot of times organizations come in and they say, all right, implement Power BI. And I'm like, great, what does your data model look like? And it's like 50 tables all over the place with all those crazy relationships. And it's like, all right, so what does self-service look like for you? Well, they're going to build Power BI reports off of this. How many people actually understand this? And taking that extra step to think of it more about not just the technical side of implementation, but what's the business understanding of this data that really serves as the fundamental principles of why we do data in the first place.
I agree
And
with
so
that,
actually,
Jared.
oh, hang on. That brings up a great question here. And when Power BI first came out, there was this big concept that they would talk about all the time: the 5 minutes to wow. It sounds to me like while you can wow someone in 5 minutes, these projects shouldn't just take 5 minutes to do. It's what's your take on how timelines and delivery, Ben?
I have a diagram, and you can't quite see it, but it's at the back there. It's the same diagram I use for every customer, and basically it's all of the data sources are on the left, your ETL process as it comes across, your modeling, and then your semantic model, and then your visualization. So I have it labeled as get, model, and visualize. I would say, and it splits. The first portion of that I call data engineering. So I call that where you get the data and you restructure and store it and what have you. And then there's a overlapping part from there onwards, and the overlapping part is the semantic model. From there onwards, you become a data analyst. So you're using the data, you're making decisions, you're helping the company do stuff with it. And the data model, again, is the crucial part. And that, for me, I would say the data engineering part and the modeling part for me is 60 to 80% of any solution. And then if you do that right, first time, the reason the last part is 20%, meaning creating reports and so forth, is because you've done the right work up here. And if you don't do the right work up here, that 20% starts to just become agonizing. And then you're building calculations on calculations, and you're trying to out-DAX yourself from a poorly designed model. And it can only spiral down to death if you go down that path. So yeah, it's an enormous design and understanding part of it. And I do want to kind of pick up on what Jared said, is that it's the business part. So if you're old hat, you might remember conceptual modeling, logical modeling, and physical data modeling. And conceptual modeling is the bridge between a data nerd like us and the business person. And you go onto the whiteboard and you say, look, if you're selling stuff and your sales, you're basically saying your transaction table, your fact table, and you sell a product and you draw another circle and you draw a line to it. And then you have a customer, another circle and a line to that. And then your date, and then your promotions. And you know what? You're actually drawing the data model on the whiteboard, and they get it. And if it matches what they think about the business, then guess what? You've nailed it to the bridge between how the business thinks and needs the data and how they function, to then designing and building out that solution. And that again is the powerful part as a consultant, to sit and talk and understand, get it right first time, and you don't end up with those very common roadblocks that people hit when they're building a model in Power BI that doesn't meet those best practice designs.
Yeah. So Christina, when you're doing that, like meeting and talking with the business, what's one of your favorite questions to ask them?
What's the make money question? What question, if we answer it, will make you money?
I like that.
At the end of the day, that's what businesses want, right?
Yeah.
You got to make money.
I think that's fantastic. Jared, I'm going to send the same question to you. When you're modeling with the business, what's the number one question that you like to ask them?
This is admittedly where I get a little bit contentious. So usually my question that I go to is, what terminology do you disagree on?
Oh.
Because this gets at least to a thought that Ben gave me on that, because for similar reasons I started doing that more with clients, of doing conceptual modeling with them. And one of the things that I would try to target is, where are the areas where different sectors of the business are in the same room talking about the same data points, but they disagree about how they should be talking about them. Like for me, I always like to think of data as it's really the thing that connects us, because collecting data is about getting a collective observation of the world around us. And different departments are going to have different needs, but in an ideal state, least personal opinion, that doesn't mean different areas should disagree on how you view the world. And so once you get to that point, I think that's where a lot of organizations then struggle, is if different parts of your organization view your world differently and they talk about it differently, as soon as you ask for that executive dashboard, I have to say, okay, which term wins?
I like that quite a bit.
You have to make those hard choices, and people have to start agreeing. Otherwise, your executives aren't going to be happy.
Sure. So Ben, how do you handle differences in terminology within, in this type of situation?
I need to ask a question, Jared. When you say differences in terminology, do you mean within the business, like they have their own internal differences, or what? Can you just help me a little bit on what you meant? I didn't catch it really.
So like common situations I've dealt with is usually around financial information. So you've got like your finance department, which is going to think about things strongly in terms of invoices and such. You'll think about the rest of the business, like sales will talk about it in terms of orders. And those data points are going to be closely connected. There are obviously going to be differences between what defines an order, what defines an invoice, but usually somewhere in there are certain intersections where both of them are talking about the same sort of financial principle, but they're using different terms to reference the same financial principle. And then that's where you have your finance reports, you have your sales reports. They're reporting on the same financial numbers, but they're using different terms to reference the same metrics.
Yeah, so for example, I've seen finance doesn't count a sale until it leaves the dock, right? Or they don't count the sale until the customer's paid for it, right? Like above and beyond the leave the dock. If we don't get paid, because they only have, they only collect 92% or something like that of their invoices out. So like they know that there's a squishiness to their industry. So finance only counts sales once it goes out the door, but sales counts it the second sales is made. And like, okay, yeah, your sales for yesterday were $800, right? That type of a thing. How do you handle that, Ben?
Yeah, I think there's an envisioning stage at the beginning where you just get the relevant people in and say, let's hash this out. And I would probably only feel this comes up when you're building a solution for two different departments on the same data. I would say mostly that's not a common occurrence for us, but certainly I would be kind of saying, I'm the middleman, let's get in the ring here and work out all the things that could come up. And do we want multiple definitions of sale? And then how do we name them? And then you've got margin, and then you've got net margin, you've got net margin, and there is 75 other margins. And look, it has to be laid out on the table before you build and say who needs what. And it's okay to have two versions as long as it's defined well and presented clearly that finance, that those different definitions, they're not wrong, they're just different views of the world. Like the salesperson booked the sale and hangs up and says done. They don't care that it's shipped or not. They are selling other people down the line. Finance are at the far end when it's paid for. So everyone's view of the world is the same, as long as we're not trying to, as long as the definitions are clear, we're making different decisions off those numbers per the part of the process. And this segment is brought to you by definitely consulting love, absolutely. So, and look, you have to be a marriage counselor sometimes when you're in these conversations to let them fight it out and come to a decision, and it can be a challenge.
Yeah, back in 2020, when none of us had any life because of COVID, I legitimately pulled 3 all-nighters in a row because an executive saw a dashboard that we made, an executive dashboard, and it had all gone off of order date because that's what we were told. Finance had come in and said, none of these numbers match anything. You have to get them to match our numbers. And sales was like, you have to get them to match our numbers. So our solution was to basically allow you to, at the top, pick. Do you want this to go by sales date, order date, or invoice date? All these things, right? And I think Christina said it, like the ARR numbers,
That's
everything
you.
has different definitions. And it took me forever back in the day of me, just learning that I didn't need bookmarks for everything. I think this is like field parameters, weren't really a thing. Calculation groups weren't really a thing. Now this would have been so much easier, just like be able to do it. But it's not going away, these problems. They're cultural problems at the end of the day. All of us become anthropologists before we make a dashboard.
Well, I'll say they can all be right.
Yes,
Right? It's
they
just a
are.
naming convention thing. It is order date, ship date, invoice date, paid on date, right? Like they're just different dates, and sales is sales. You just track them accordingly. So
What you
understanding
want
that.
is a nice report that kind of summarizes, here's this month's sales, here's the ordered amount, the shipped amount,
Mhm.
the paid amount, and some definitions. And anytime it comes up, you link them to that page and say, read the thing there that tells you why there is different ones. And then you pick the one you want and
Yeah.
go from there. I don't think it's you need a place for people, because they'll understand the differences in the meeting, and then 1 minute later they've forgotten what you just said. So having a little bit of a place to point them to is handy to stop the questions coming back every day.
They have full-time jobs, right? They're not sitting around looking at data all day. That's what I remind myself of, like I frequently forget things all the time. Like I'm constantly going back to different handbooks for things. They need a handbook for their data.
Oh, that is a great call out. So how do you find it best to document and share the data definitions with customers? Right now, I've seen a number of different strategies there. I've seen, like, oh, we use Purview, we use custom reports, we just have a SharePoint site. What seems to grab people and work the best in the real world from your experience? And I'll start with Jared and ask you, and we'll go around the horn.
So what I've at least done in the past to try and solve for this, and it's twofold. One is the conceptual modeling exercises that Ben talked about. I'll do that as well. Any artifact that I build out for this problem specifically, my goal when I designed it is if it takes longer than 5 minutes for you to understand what is in here, it's too complicated. And especially for organizations where you are struggling in this area, you need to keep it simple more than deal with all the complexities, because once you get into the complexities, it takes too long for people to understand, and they're going to say, TLDR, I don't have time to take a look at this. I'm going to move on and just do my job. So I would use conceptual modeling, and honestly, sometimes just keep it simple. Build an Excel document with terms, make them define it out, put it out in a place that's shared, and bring it up regularly in meetings where you're going to have different departments at the table, and just make sure that everybody at least acknowledges that either this is places where we're using the same terms, or in some spots, this is where we're disagreeing, and this is what we mean when we're talking about this, so nobody's left behind in the conversation.
I love it. Ben, what's your go-to here?
My go-to is do nothing for as long as I can. So I flat out refuse to put documentation together for, let's say, a semantic model and reports until it's in a steady state. And sometimes that never happens. You build these models that are growing, and the business changes, and goals change, and rules change, and new metrics come in. I mean, it's like trying to document a moving target. And as a consultant, I can't spend 2 days building something for you and another 1 day documenting it, when that 1 day is going to be rewritten again. And the cost factor, so I try to do as little as possible. And I would kind of do what Jared is talking about, keep the documentation simple. In the conceptual model takes you a good way there. I would then document probably the most kind of common metrics, like the sales metric and the the margin metric and the volume metric, but then all the bazillion other metrics you have with time intelligence and KPIs and the rules that you apply, which is the intelligence part of business intelligence. I don't document them until I find that everyone is like using them. They're part of the regular heartbeat of the business, and you can create a page, yes, manually. Those days are numbered, though. I think, you know, with AI using and scanning DAX to create some documentation is becoming viable now. And I would have choked saying that a year ago or more, saying it's rubbish documenting DAX. Are you kidding me? But you know what? It's going from 0 to something, and I'm okay.
I think we've got something for you here. Let's see if we can get this up and show this in a reasonable way here. So if you haven't seen this, this is the auto docs that I have built out that queries the data model DMVs. And we built this in conjunction with Kevin, and was built off of some other stuff that was out there by Alex Powers and a bunch of other people. But this is a model that queries the semantic model, and you can go in and just see where all your joins are, what your relationships are inside your model, so you can understand your date dimensions or your factory seller sales. You can look at the definitions of your model, and even, you know, go in and look at like the size of your model, details. You can look at, you know, individual tables by size. It really does an like a real good job of like drilling in and even like tracking the key metrics that you might want to for the performance or size or growth of your model. And this you just set up to auto refresh every morning. And so you've kind of come up with an auto documentation of what's inside your model. This is what I will do before I ever go to a SharePoint site or something along those lines, because then I just have all of my stuff already and I'm good to go there. Have you?
Yes.
What's that?
I built something similar as well. So I was mucking around with Power Automate, and I spun up a Chat GPT in my own tenant, and I passed the DAX in to extend it to get a kind of a readable version of what the measures and metrics are. And yeah, look, it's hit and miss as to what the readable thing is, but it's something. And to be honest, some people will read the definitions and it'll be okay. It'll give them enough. So yeah, ripping out all that metadata is good for, I think, development purposes and internal purposes, but a simple version of just the metrics for the customer is a sideline version of that, I would say.
Yeah, and Nikki is pointing out that there's also the info view DAX functions, but that's technical docs, and like functionality and stuff I think is useful too. At one point in time, we recommended, like back before we had all these things, we recommended a page inside the reports, like that was a standard format that had common definitions, as well as what should you use the report for. And I'll loop back to the first report I ever built, like in IT. It was an Oracle-based Hyperion report. I was given the requirements. I sat down, and over the course of a week or two, I built out the report. I shipped it off to business users saying, hey, here's your report. Let me know what you think about this. We'll meet again in 2 weeks and go over it. And when I met with them 2 weeks later, I said, how'd you like it? Did that do what you were hoping for? Did you get the information you needed? They said, yes, it was great. We fired everyone on the list. Thank you so much. That was exactly what we were looking for. I'm like, wait, you what did you do with all the people on that list? They're like, yeah, they were stealing from us. I'm like, I don't think that's what that report was showing. So I have become incredibly sensitive to making sure non-data people know how to look at data, because it has very real world consequences if they're right or wrong about looking at it. Now, turns out I think they might have been right on that, but it was still like Oh, I didn't know you'd fire people just without talking to someone. That was an eye opener. All right. With that, let's pivot into what is because we are well, actually, hang on one second. We are at the hour, so this is now time for Neuro Gum. If you're not familiar with Neuro Gum, it gives you caffeine, L-theanine, and your B vitamins to give you natural energy. And maybe they'll see this video and become a sponsor of the show. They are not a sponsor. I pay for this stuff. So, but we are we are at the halfway point. One of the things I wanted to hit on, and we will go to Ben first, and then we'll go around the corner. But with Power BI being its 10-year window, what is your favorite story in the last 10 years of working with Power BI? And we'll go to Ben first.
Data flows.
Say
all the
more.
way. Yeah. So I was in Copenhagen in 2018 or 19 or something, and Adam Saxton mentioned the release of data flows, and for me, they filled an enormous gap in the Power BI world, which is the collection and transformation of data. So what was impossible back in Power Pivot days was you could only point and shoot to data sources and not do any rearrangement of them. And what data flows did for me back then was, for any solution that wasn't like major scale enterprise, where you didn't really want to spin up well, SSIS and on-prem anything, but obviously leaning more towards Azure Synapse and pipelines and stuff. You wanted a quick and cheap way to do some ETL and get that over the line, and that filled an enormous gap. And it enabled us to create enterprise feeling and scalable solutions without buying anything else for $10 a month per person. And we pull data from Dynamics CRM, and we have a customer who upgraded to the PPU, so we got the kind of incremental refresh, and we're pulling out 50, 60 million rows of data into a multi-gig kind of semantic model that refreshes in 10 minutes, and that's everything. That's ETL model refresh and everything for what is now $20 a month. But those data flows for me really created and filled an enormous gap as part of the general story of Power BI.
I completely agree. I don't know if it's my number one thing, but I loved the data flow because it solved the biggest problem of, I have 70 tables in my model. I go to refresh, the refresh fails. Which table caused the issue? And it was the stupid target goals table that now breaks cardinality, and so I couldn't refresh my model because of this one little table that I haven't even deployed my report about yet. By doing data flows and doing your refresh, then that allowed you to at least get all of your tables refreshed and not have to worry about like that stupid one table that suddenly had a violation of cardinality. You could still get that refresh done. Christina, how about you? What was your favorite memory or favorite thing in Power BI?
Tyndall, when that got launched.
Tyndall?
Yep.
What?
I know, and that's sad, but that's what I
okay.
love.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Say more. My exposure to Tyndall, while it looks promising, I'm not saying it like bad, but why is that your number one feature in the last 10 years?
Well, I can't choose anything in Fabric, right? And so I got to pick something released in Power BI. And I was like, what's something I actively used right away when it came out? And it was Tyndall. I was working with a customer who was implementing basically for an ISV. And so we had a data model that had to get deployed to, I think, 100 customers with slight tweaks. They had user-defined functions. They had different measures for things. And so it was my first exposure to C#. It was my first exposure to really deep model integrations with an embedded solution. And so Tyndall made all that a million times easier. Like, I was on the Power BI cruise with Mateus, and it was right before Tyndall came out. And so I was doing a 3-hour session on C# in Power BI, and he was in the room, and he went, "Do you mind if I show you this new thing that I'm building?" And he came up, and we rescripted everything from TMSL to Tim Dull, and it was a million times easier to read, a million times easier to work with. It was incredible. It's probably one of the peaks of my career, was sitting in the room with him, with a room of like 20 other nerds on a boat over to Norway, and we're just chatting about this new thing, Timdo.
Oh man, I wish I had the on a boat gif somewhere.
It was pretty epic, I won't lie.
Well,
I
that's
don't think
awesome.
anything else is compared to that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right, Jared, how about you?
So I'll at least narrow it down into Power Query, but I would say, in all honesty, for me, my story is about the entire design of Power BI itself. What it makes me think of is, gosh, this was a good 6-7 years ago, I think. And at the time, I was working a fair amount with smaller businesses. Power BI was still only a couple years into existence. And I had this interesting experience with an organization who's working in the dairy industry. And a lot of people at that point doing a lot of Excel reporting. Not a very complicated, a lot of formulas, but we were starting to do something. I did it for a number of customers. We called it Art of the Possible. And it was basically this is what you're doing today in Excel. Give us just a couple of hours. Let us show you some of the things that you could do if you utilize something like Power BI. So they showed us this really complicated Excel file that they were having to do all these manual pulls from all these different sources just to get this sort of stuff functional. And it was really only about 3 hours, I think, to take that, work with Power Query, and build some visualizations of, at least they didn't give any requirements on that. So typically it would be like, okay, what are some metrics that I think are interesting? Let's just create a couple of visuals, show interactivity, all of that. After those 3 hours, presented it back to the client. I kid you not, they cried. They cried out of joy of realizing what was possible, not only in terms of visualizing their data, but they're like, this alone saves me hours a week.
Wow.
That you can just hit the refresh button and this all just magically works. I think just sometimes the simple things can't be overstated, because for a lot of organizations out there, they're still in that world today where the simple things are still complicated. And sometimes a simple problem doesn't need a complicated solution. It needs a simple solution that's designed well for simplicity for a large audience. And I think that's where Power Query hit it out of the park.
Boy, I hope my AI short creator captures that and publishes that as a short. I'm going to say lots to choose from on the Power BI side, and I like what you guys have said. I'm a huge fan of data flows. I'm a big fan of Power Query, the ability to automate everything. I have not touched Tyndall as of yet, so I can't speak to that at all. But I'll say the big thing that really hit and shifted consumption in Power BI for me was XMLA endpoints.
Yes.
And being able to programmatically hit that semantic model, deploy the semantic model, and manage it outside of the desktop. And then, that led to Tabular Editor, which, led to all sorts of integration points with other services and other tools. And I think that XMLA endpoints was an awesome advancement. I'm a little I don't know why it's set as off by default. Turn that on, everyone, turn it on if it's not on. Microsoft, of all the things they've toggled on by default, I don't know why that's not one of them. So I would like to see much more of that stuff. So that would be my big thing that I just absolutely love. We're gonna go back around the horn though, and we're if in chat for you guys, leave a message about what your favorite thing is inside of Power BI, and you know, it's been 10 years. We've had actually 15 years of features and functionality that come out from Power View all the way up to Power BI. So let us know what you think is most, you know, some of your favorite things. Yeah, that's right, Andrew.
Yeah.
XML read write was when Power BI grew up. That's spot on. We're gonna go back around on now your least favorite addition or functionality in the Power BI service, and I'm gonna go ahead and
Can we
start.
guess yours, Chris?
Uh, yes, you can guess mine.
Is it perchance calculated columns?
That is correct. I see how, why, and where DAX columns were added into the Power BI service back in the days where IT was very restrictive and locked down and prevented people from doing stuff, and back when data flows wasn't as easy to use and write and all, you know, those things. I saw, you know, hey, just learn DAX and you can use it to do data transformations as well as create measures. And I like, hey, that was a powerful story. But holy cow, have we learned how painful that is? And so I cannot say how much I implore the world to stop using data flows, especially because of how expensive it is. It's something like in the neighborhood of 240 times more expensive than Spark or SQL when it comes to transformations. Please stop giving Microsoft all of that money. Move your logic someplace, any place else. You doesn't need to be in DAX calculated columns. All right. Microsoft is rich enough. They've got tons of money. Power query it. Do it somewhere else. All right. Okay, Ben, what's your least favorite, or like what feature would you wish they'd fix or throw out or get rid of? What do you not like?
I started writing my whole list while we were talking through. So, do you remember data marts?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a failed experiment. Streaming data flows, another
Those are
failed
dead now too.
experiment. I couldn't really see a scenario where they had any value. I can't remember the name of it, but the map visual that's been in preview for
shape map
forever. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
shape map. Yeah, I was thinking field map, but so do you know what? And those things, it's okay to have failed experiments. Like it's perfectly fine, right? If you write it off as we tried something and it didn't work, and we also removed it, it's good. There's a lesson learned. I only feel sorry for the very few people who had it in production and then like, oh, it's gone. So I do want to have a bit of a bonus point on not something that I didn't like, but I think is a severely underutilized capability, which is the natural self-service capability. I put an enormous amount of effort in my semantic models for them to be structured, labeled, and named very cleanly. You'll see no underscores or any of that kind of stuff in mine, and then there's spaces in the names. It's very business centric. The semantic model is intended to be giving the data back to the customer. And every time I build it, I'm like, hey, guess what? You can fully self-service whenever you want, create your own reports. Oh man, it's like pushing a boulder up a hill, trying to actually get people to do it. I'm like, you can do it in Excel. And, I'm not going to take Excel off your hands. You can just connect to this thing and look what you can do. And also Power BI Desktop, you can connect to the same model. And guess what? They're singing off the same hymn sheet. You've heard of the term single source of truth. Well, this is it. It's right there. And it's like tumbleweeds. And it boggles my mind the value that a customer can get on top of the suite of reports that you create, which are kind of periodic reports, my monthly, my weekly, here's my trend of this, that, and the other. But what about right now when something that I'm trying to find is in that data and I'm not getting it because I don't know how to get it out. I think there is an enormous amount of unlocked or trapped potential in semantic models that is being missed purely because I don't know why. I haven't licked it yet in terms of the uptake, but I think that that is a missed opportunity for a lot of end customers who, you know, let's face it, we said it before, they don't know how to define things. Maybe they don't know how to design a report. I never ask my customers to design a report. I say, tell me what you need and I'll design the thing because that's what I do. You don't tell me what charts you want. But then I do talk about self-service and how easy it is. And I do demos. And I think, Christina, you said it, people have a day job and it's not necessarily to get in and do that. And I think there's a missed opportunity there.
Personalized visuals has been my ticket to people doing pseudo self-service. If I just show them that if they need to, they can add a new column or they can change this bar chart into a scatter plot for one question they need answered, that has been my go-to self-service. Because you're right. Yeah.
Christina, do you turn on that allow for user customization by default toggle on all your reports or just some of them?
Just some of them.
Okay.
Yeah. It does depend on who it's going to and how many conversations I've had with them.
Very fair. All right, Christina, while you're up, what's one feature that's been a miss on in the Power BI service?
A feature that's been a miss or a missing feature?
A feature that's been a miss, but I'd love to hear what your missing feature is.
Yeah, so a feature that's been a miss, and it works really well, so I can't be too mad about it, but I am mad because I hate bookmarks. If I get a report and I have literally seen this, 600 bookmarks. If there are that many bookmarks, I just want to die inside, because if somebody needs to make a change to one page, you're not making a change to one page. You're making a page to one page and each visual 600 times. It's impossible to maintain, impossible to manage. Not a fan. I am a fan of personalized bookmarks in the service, where if I'm a user of a report, I can make my own bookmarks and quickly get to the views I want. Love that. Huge fan. But not a fan of somebody asking me to build a bunch of reports with bookmarks.
Double tick for me on both of those points. I really avoid them,
Yes.
but I think the service one is actually like it's in their hands and they can go Wild West if they want. But the reports that I've seen where there's too many, oh man, it's unwieldy.
It really is.
It gets crazy really fast. All right, Jared, you're up. What's something that's been a miss or missing feature, right?
So I was initially going to say a lot of what Ben already brought up as far as like the whole Q&A, the semantics, because admittedly that was the same thing I dealt with too, of like organizations like, oh yeah, turn this on, it's really easy, and it's like, why can't it answer my questions? I'm like, look at your data model. Like, okay, clear. So something, and I think at least it's changed over the years, but I'll say at least it's still been frustrating for me on the Power BI side, and I'll say admittedly some of it's translated over to the Fabric side, and that's where more of the frustration is coming from. Ownership of assets in the Fabric or in the Power BI service. Like, especially early on, I was dealing with a lot of situations of working on development teams with like Power BI reports and such, and having some of the assets in Power BI have ownership where, oh, all right, I'm going to pick up where you left off. Well, now I have to take ownership. Okay, now they're going to take over. Now they have to take ownership. And it's just constantly toggling back and forth between that. I get at least the one side I like is the visibility of, all right, who is typically owning some of these resources. That's kind of nice. But I feel like the flip side, I've run into more issues than not where it just caused issues of collaborating with people on the assets in Power BI.
Subscriptions are a huge example of that. I just had a client where subscription was owned by somebody who just left the company, that subscription was part of their production system where it got emailed somewhere and then got picked up by something else and then inputted in the report. And that email never got kicked off. Nobody knew. And like 3 weeks later, we were figuring out what happened.
How did this end? Why did this stop functioning? Right?
Yes, it's insane.
Yeah. Andrew has called out a big thing here. He's saying goals, scorecards, metrics, whatever the heck they call that thing.
None of us use it, Andrew. That's why it didn't come to mind.
Hang on, I use it all the time. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the most underutilized features out there. I will say they have unfortunately not continued to make investments in it because there's some like broken pieces on it. And then whatever they rolled out with the whole metrics layer thing,
Yeah.
that like, well, that's a hot garbage fire right there. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm hoping they're going to have some updates to that. I don't know anyone who's using the metrics layer for anything. I was hoping that was going to be the modern version of perspectives, where you could see perspectives of your semantic models, and they were all your relevant measures that you could have access to, and you could share that perspective out with people. That's kind of what I was hoping we were going to see with that, so that you would actually get, like a bundle of tables, joins, security, and measures that you could then distribute out at the metrics layer. To me, that seems like an insanely powerful thing that would address, Ben, your question of like, hey, I'm not able to answer some questions around my semantic model. How do I unlock it? Oh, look at this section of your semantic model. Like this, this much of your semantic model is confusing. It's huge. But if I focus you on your question, then you have like an incredibly powerful tool right at your disposal. And it's always been there, but there was just so much there that you couldn't see it and it wasn't available for you. So I was really hoping either that's what metrics would be on day one, or metrics would rapidly evolve to that. So I'm hoping maybe that takes flight soon enough. Yeah, I would like to see that there.
That I think generally needs a huge, like, something needs to be solved there. Like I don't know how widely it's known, but the running joke of in Power BI, what's the difference between a dashboard and a dashboard?
Right.
Yeah, I don't even need to say the punchline. Like, I mean, something in there, everybody sees everything in Power BI and they're like, okay, executive dashboard, I want something. And then they look at the dashboard feature and they're like, well, but I still want to do this, and I still want to do this, and I want to do this. Like,
well, I thought dashboards were dead. Like, the last time dashboards were mentioned in an update was in I want to say April of 2017. And so I'm like, oh, dashboards is dead. There's no more features. They're not working on it. I haven't heard anything about it. Dashboards is dead. And then all of a sudden, mid-year last year, the real-time intelligence rolled out a dashboard feature. I'm like, what the ever flippin'? What are you talking about? What do you mean you rolled out a dashboard feature? Like there's been no investment in that space in. I mean, we were approaching a decade until we got this thing rolled out. Like, to me, it's either invest in it and build it out, as Ben was kind of like, or kill it, right? Like, I have no problem with killing a feature, right? I'm going to disagree with you, Ben, on data marts is like a key thing. I think data marts, the concept of a data mart is so pivotal. I think data marts launched at exactly the time and had such a positive uptick right as Microsoft was like evaluating, is Fabric going to be a viable thing? And they saw that come out. They realized like, oh crap, that is good. The concept of a data mart is good, but it's on a legacy tech. We should be building for a future tech. And so I think there was a shift in priorities, and now data marts is going away. Fabric is going forward.
So my motto is with these technologies, because I've been watching this for a very long time. with Microsoft is follow the money. So whatever they're investing in, continue to use it, and whatever they stop, exit as quick as you can.
Yeah.
And you'll see where Microsoft is spending money and what it's being talked about, and then what quietly goes away. Then you need to go, okay, that's the death knell is signed, and I'm leaving that technology or that feature, whatever it is.
That honestly, that is a great strategy. I can fully get behind that one. All right, Ben, we're at the wrap up moment. I want to give you the last word to like give us some info as we head out. Tell people where to find yourself, plug your services, all that good stuff, and yeah, take us out, Ben.
Okay, so I just want to take a moment again to say thanks, Chris and Jared and Christina. It's been wonderful hours worth that has absolutely flown by, and to all the people who've been writing messages, I've been reading them all, and it's been great to see. I've really had a great hour. I was panicking before this that I would have nothing interesting to say, and I still think that's true, but at least I had fun doing that. So yeah, look, my services are really based in Ireland, and so I don't think plugging them for work is really going to be worth it. But you could surely take a look. The company's called Datalineo, datalineo.com. We have a small number of customers, but our customers are huge global multinationals. So we do very high spec, large scale solutions using the Microsoft technologies for global companies in all kind of areas, and we've got some big name customers as well as some nice Irish companies as well. And I don't blog often. You'll see on the Datalineo website there's a blog page. I'm very infrequent, so you don't really hear of me very much out there, to be honest. So I've been around forever, but I've kind of been the quiet guy in the background in terms of social media stuff. I'm very uncool when it comes to that. So LinkedIn is probably the best place if you want to get connected with me. I might write some things up there from time to time. And I think, Chris, that's where I might have caught your attention with a fairly random post there not long ago about it's okay to use many-to-many and bi-directional joins if you know what you're doing. And it was the same day you said, hey, do you want to come on? I'm like, God, am I talking about these joins or what? What have I got myself into? But yeah, look, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. So if you do want to connect, I'd be delighted. LinkedIn is probably the most active thing for me. And I'd be happy to chat with people. And I run an Irish event here that's in June every year called Data Cayley, and that's spelt data. You know how to spell it, but Cayley is CEILI.IE, and the word Cayley is an Irish word for kind of like a festival or party kind of thing. The place where I live, the street gets cut off, and they bring in music and stuff like that. It's a little get together on the street kind of thing. It's an Irish festival, let's say. So yeah, we have a data one of those every June, and we have speakers coming in from around the world. And I also run the Dublin Fabric user group. So every month when possible, I have a speaker doing that, and it's always in person. I've kind of ditched the online thing. I'm a man to meet people in real life nowadays, and I'm exhausted of online user group events because around COVID, there was no geographical boundary, so you could just dial into any of them. But now I'm bringing people together and helping them meet and so forth. So that's me. Happy to connect with people, and again, hugely grateful for the opportunity. And thanks to everyone who's been writing cool messages in the chat.
Ben, Jared, Christina, thank you guys all so much for hopping on. And thank you for joining us on your Friday, right? Thank you guys all so much for joining us. Some awareness, as you can see, the Kratos BI Studios is being packed up and is moving. So like next week, I'm going to have to take the show on the road. Be aware that might cause some kerfluffles in how this is going to go, because I have a mobile studio that is all packed up in storage and I no longer have access to. So we're going to see how fun I can make this from a mobile phone. I think we might be live streaming from next week. But we are dedicated, committed to keep doing fun stuff. So we will see you guys. So we'll see you next Friday. You guys all have the best weekend ever. Peace.
Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.